o'clock. This is a Thursday, and we're throwing it back not too far, but it's a conversation that goes back far. You know, it goes to 1999 and then goes via what we experience now. 17th of June, 1999 is a time that most South Africans who were alive at that time and actively in sport will never forget, because that is the day of the run-out when the match ended in cricket in a World Cup semi-final between Alan Donald and Lance Klusener, ending the match, which resulted in Australia's winning a place in the final where they would play against Pakistan. That's the closest that South Africa had ever gotten to a final. 24 years later, South Africa surpassed that, which had been, the marker of how far we'd ever gotten in an international ICC tournament. We surpassed that. And then this year, in June again, in the T20 this time around, we made it to a final. We didn't win it, but it's the closest we've ever come. Two similarities here. In 1999, it was a team that had the likes of Hansie Cronje back then, who captained the team. And I think Sean Pollock was the vice captain of the team. It had people like Nicky Boyer, Mark Boucher, Daryl Cullinan, Alan Donald, Lance Klusener, Gary Kirsten, Jacques Cullis. John T. Rhodes was still, a favorite here on this show. We've had him on, and it was one of the best things we ever did to have him on. They were all part of the team. And there was one person as well was part of the team, Makhandini. Makhandini was a part of that team until he was replaced by Dawson. But he was a part of that team till he was replaced by Dawson, of course, because he had then had a conviction, a criminal conviction, after he had fought some trials in his life. This time around, very similar. Kagiso Rabada, the only one there. So let's have a post-mortem of what Team South Africa has done at the World Cup, the T20 that just ended. How well we played, how far we've gotten, and then in this conversation, we need to as well speak about the value of transformation. For those that are saying transformation weighs South Africa down, the two times we've gotten far in international competitions is because we didn't have any black people. One this time around, one even last time, who didn't even, of course, finally make it to the final squad due to the conviction. Are they right in their sentiments? Should we just let cricket be and be played by those that have been chosen and don't affect any changes or don't affect any transformational changes into that team? It sounds like a meek conversation, right? But take a look at the facts. And that's what we're going to do. I've got Zaahier Adams, who's coming from Cape Town, as well as Kass Naidoo, who's in Joburg. Oh, he's in Joburg. We've got Zaahier Adams, who's in Johannesburg, and of course, Kass Naidoo, who'll be joining us in the conversation as well. She's an ICC cricket commentator and founder of G Sport for Girls. Zaahier Adams, IOL cricket writer. We don't have enough conversations about our rugby and our cricket of late, and a lot of you calling in and saying, let's have those serious conversations. This is it. If you are a cricket player or your child is a cricket player and they're not white, is there a future for that child in this country? Should we be enforcing those cricket and those quota systems across the board? I've never heard anybody spewing and going on about the quotas in hockey. Don't hear a lot of that. In football, of course not. Black people are the majority there. Then the reverse of that is where the white kids. They're not there because they're not getting the opportunity to be there. They're not there because they're not given options for them to be there. No. A lot of the white players in this country at a young age travel to Europe to try and make their careers there. There is a lot of young cricket, footballing South Africans in Europe who've opted and chosen to pursue their career in that way. Can't be the same for everybody else here. Let's have a serious conversation. A lot to talk about tomorrow for the Podcast Friday, guys. Chippa United signing Andile Jali. We also saw Junior Mendieta now confirmed to have left Mamelodi Sundowns and signing in Greece. We have the Group K that South Africa finds themselves in as far as the draw of AFCON is concerned. Seems a straightforward group for qualification for Bafana Bafana. So we'll touch on all of those things. Keegan Dolly set to move to SuperSport United. There's a lot to talk about. We did Casablanca wanting the signature of Rulani Mukwena, but the podcast guys will be here tomorrow and we'll unpack the week. It's possibly the biggest week in football that we've seen. We take a breather and a break though from football to talk cricket. It's one of those things that boggles the mind. When Bafana came back from Cote d'Ivoire. They came back to a hero's welcome. I was at the airport. There was people everywhere, celebrating the bronze medal that they've gotten. The South African cricket team has just come back. They've gotten a silver. They came second in an ICC World Cup in a tournament where we've never gotten this close before. There they are getting a medal. And I just heard they're back. I didn't see anything at the airport. I wonder what the double standard is about there. But Zaahier Adams, IOL writer, is with us now. Zaahier, why is it that you weren't at the airport? I didn't see crowd shots. I didn't see players fighting for their lives, trying to get through the crowds.
Hi, Andile. First of all, a big part of it was the fact that there were two plans. There was a plan that had South Africa won, the entire team would have come home with the trophy and basically celebrated with the country. There were all sorts of plans, open bus stop rides, all those type of things were planned. But obviously that didn't go according to plan, and the final wasn't won. So these players, they've got commitments all around the world immediately after the World Cup, and about 80% of them actually playing in the Major League Cricket in the US, which is basically a stone throw away from the Caribbean. So instead of flying all of 40 hours home, they actually remained there, and only the coach and three players along with the support staff came home yesterday with us. So that could be part of the reason there, sir. So nothing untoward, unfortunately, there.
Yeah, I mean, not the first time that we've had a team arrive like that. And, when guys want to do it, they would have done it, I feel, as Zaahier, to be honest. Even if it's having a representation of players that show up and they've got their medals, some sort of press conference. If they'd really wanted to push through and do it, I think the disappointment of not having been in a final is ultimately, you had planned for this big thing because you thought this is a big chance for us to do it. I think the watered down version, which was the silver, maybe not quite so enticing.
Yeah, so Rob Walter, the coach, he addressed the media today along with Ncube, the director of South African Cricket, also the president of South African Cricket, Riaz Richards. They were all there at the press conference along with Keshav Maharaj and Andile. The rest of the team, as I said, they hung around in the US because they get going next week again. They start on Monday, so they go going, and so it's understandable why they wouldn't come home all the way and then fly back again. Obviously, if they won, it would have been a different story altogether.
ICC cricket commentator and founder of G Sport for Girls, Kass Naidoo, also joins us on the line. Kass, a very good evening.
Good evening, Andile. How's it going?
I wonder, Kass, when you're that close to the action, is the heartbreak even bigger?
Strangely enough, not. And I hope that's not any disrespect to what everyone else was feeling at the time. At 151 to 4, one of my colleagues walked past me from India and he said, "Mate, congratulations, you guys have worked so hard, you absolutely deserve this." And a couple of other people walked past and said the same thing to me. In the back of my mind, I knew that the last 5 overs, throughout the entire tournament, really decided a number of matches, including the close encounter between South Africa and England, the match against Nepal, the win against Bangladesh. It all came down to the last 5 overs. And yes, while the graphic read 30 of 30 required, it was really 30 of 18. It was not 30 of 30 because 12 deliveries was to be bowled by Jasprit Bumrah, the player of the tournament, the MVP, the player that single-handedly got India to win a World Cup that was slipping through their fingers. Because the South African team that made history already in the semi-finals dared to dream in the maiden World Cup final that they could bring a World Cup trophy home. So it was sad in the end, but also being very reflective about it, having been a neutral, watching India's humiliation in Ahmedabad last year in front of 100,000 people. I've seen a team that was unbeaten all through that tournament be beaten by an Australian team that scraped their way into the final. And then I saw an Indian team that came across the line, something that they so desperately wanted. So there were two teams that desperately wanted this title for different reasons. And the team that had the better death bowling, the deeper batting lineup, and a real need to step out of darkness that they had found themselves in November won the trophy.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll, step by step take it from game one all the way to the final, the Proteas. How did we get to the finals first, and then how do we lose it all in that final? Then we'll get into the more intense conversation, Kass, one that I really want to have. I kept quiet here because I didn't want to heavy down the Proteas going to the World Cup with transformation talk. We'll do it today. Sydney Rain in 1992, Ellen Donald's run out with Lance Kluser in 99, Sean Pollock and the math going wrong in 2003. So many hot takes that I can count at the hands of the Proteas, but there was real hope with this generation, with this 2024 June team. We all thought this is the closest we've ever gotten, and we're going to get to see an ICC trophy live in South Africa on top of a bus as we line the streets of a cold Johannesburg. But it wasn't to be. Kass Naidoo joins us on the line, ICC cricket commentator as well as founder of G Sport for Girls. Zaahier Adams, IOL cricket writer, also joins us to do a post-mortem of all things Protea. Zaahier, Kass there, very romantic. In her words as usual. I could see the visuals of those last couple of overs from what she told me. But let's talk about you. When you do the post-mortem, you're writing an article about what the Proteas have done there. What does it sound like? How does it begin and how does it end? How do we capitulate, or rather how do we highlight what this was for the Proteas? If I want to read this without having seen these matches, how do I put it all into sense from game one all the way to the final?
So firstly, I was with Kass there in Ahmedabad last year, where we experienced that silence of 135,000 people, and I was literally almost on a plane to Barbados for that. So just that's how I feel about the Proteas and what they achieved, getting over that semi-final. In terms of that was the hurdle. That to me, that was the primary. That was 52 years of waiting to get over that semi-final hurdle. That's the hurdle that has tripped up so many Proteas teams before. I was in Auckland in 2015. I was in Nottingham 2009. And the only reason I'm saying the fact that I was there was that you could see all that pain and that hurt and that emotion, that has lost the Proteas fans over the years, and why that belief in the Proteas is no longer there. And this group, throughout this World Cup, what they've done was that they have actually just given Proteas fans once again that belief, that feeling that they can get over in those crunch moments. And they did it in 5 or 8 of the games in New York, Bangladesh, where Keshav Maharaj hadn't bowled the final over in his life before. He gets out there. Hayden Markram takes a catch in that last over, similar to what Sky Yadav did in the final. So those are the margins. These are the margins we're talking about. When South Africa played Nepal in St. Vincent, Quinton de Kock, he throws the ball against the batter's shoulder. It falls out into Heinrich Klaassen's hand. He runs somebody out. These are the minuscule margins that we are talking about. We're talking about, like, if you can equate it to a 100-meter final Olympics. What is this? What separates the victors? You're talking about 0.0 of a second. That's the difference between a gold and a silver medal. And that's how close the Proteas came this time. So that is actually how close they came. And sometimes you just got to nod your head and say you were beaten by somebody better. And that is what Jasprit Bumrah is. Jasprit Bumrah is the greatest fast bowler of his generation. We all love KG. We think KG, in South Africa, KG is up there with the very, very best. And Jasprit Bumrah has just shown how good he is when he stood up there. And when I was at the Wanderers watching that at the fan park, and there were about 5,000 people who braved the cold to the Joburg night air to watch the Proteas. And you could feel at the halfway line when South Africa again, they were chasing a record World Cup score in a final. Nobody ever chased that down. And the line at the halftime was, the interval was, hulle weet nie wat ons weet nie. They don't know what we know. That's how confident the Proteas were, using the Springbok line, using Driekus' line about that they were going to get over the line. And when Heinrich Klaassen got that 24 of that over, that made us all believe that this was the time. And unfortunately, it hasn't. And I had a conversation with Rob Walters, and I reminded him that that England had lost a semi-final. We call it a final, T20 World Cup final. We call it Brett White of the West Indies struck 4 sixes in the final over to win the game. He hit 4 sixes in the final over. So can you imagine that heartbreak? Then they went and they lost the semi-final the following year in the Champions Trophy before winning the whole World Cup on home soil in 2019. And that's what South Africa has done now. They've lost the semi-final last year against Australia. They've now lost the T20 World Cup final. So it's all shaping up for 2027 on home soil. So that's the belief that I feel that the Proteas have given South Africans again.
Wow, Zaahier, I mean, you're way more positive than what I am, and I love it. Maybe your optimism can rub off on me here a little bit. Kass, what about you? What's your post-mortem of this particular team, the individuals that in that last game particularly, I would have thought should have stepped up, should have been, the ones that carried us through with the bat in particular, but it wasn't to be so. When you do the post-mortem of the entire thing, Zaahier is looking at it in a positive manner, saying all of this is the build-up for what we'll be able to do here at home. Do you have the same optimism?
Again, I'm going to quote a colleague, and I can't give names because I really still want to stay in the industry, so I won't quote names. But a commentary colleague of mine said, mate, you've got to lose the final to win one. And essentially what that means is, for the first time in South Africa's cricket history, we were in the ring. We often talk about the finalists who made it to the final and how we kind of fell apart in the semi. The greatest takeout for me from this campaign was the freedom with which this team played, even when the noose tightened around their necks in tight situations. I didn't see this team panic. So I go through a couple of instances in this World Cup campaign. For instance, against England, 25 of 3 overs required. England should have won that. South Africa produced some inspired death bowling, that incredible touch by Markram, and that victory ensured that South Africa played the Trinidad semi-final against Afghanistan, where they blew them away. That should have been England, because had England beaten South Africa, England would have ended on top. So that was a big tick for me, is that they were able to powerfully head into the semi-finals, knowing that they played Trinidad. But winning the semi-final has so many consequences, positively so, because it's not just in World Cups. Even in bilateral series, when South Africa has to play the final game, when it's 2-2 and they go win, everyone always says, South Africa doesn't know how to play knockout cricket. And I think we showed up this World Cup. We can play knockout cricket. But at the same time, because we think a lot of ourselves, it's great to have good self-esteem, we also need to put into context the kind of team we were coming up against. A team that had played successive finals where they had lost, a team that played in finals and knew what it was like to manage the emotions on the day. Yeah, when you look at South Africa and those 3 wickets that they picked up after Marco Jansen got 10 for 15 in the first over, when they picked up those wickets, the emotions were so high. When I look at India, they looked like a team who knew they would only celebrate when it came. And when it came, they were in tears, grown men in tears on the field. They couldn't believe they'd won. So I look at South Africa, and there were so many victorious points in this campaign. It was a bridge too far because India were a better balanced team. South Africa lost the toss. They came back strongly. But at the halfway stage, I felt 177 was too much in a final. I felt that the bowling could have been better. And where, for me, the match was lost, was South Africa gave away 58 runs in the last 5 overs, and India gave away 22 for 4. That was the victory, is that India were able to win the moments that mattered. And they've been there before. It's a crushing loss, I think, for many people who watched, because South Africa was so close. And I'm sure everyone's trying to find those 7 runs. Heinrich Klaasen, David Miller, Marco Jansen's wondering, how do we go for as many runs as we did? KG, everybody in that team right now is hurting more than we are. I am with Zaahier. I feel that if managed properly, this team, if opportunities are given and equal opportunities are found for players, that a silverware is around the corner. But it is really in the hands of Cricket South Africa and all its stakeholders to say, we have a twin focus in cricket. Is to make cricket a national sport of winners, meaning everyone has equal opportunities, and at the same time we provide the best high-performance environment to have a World Cup trophy in our cabinet that we can show off to say, after over 30 years, we have finally crossed the line.
Zaahier, with all this being said, and I agree, we need to applaud them for having gotten to where they got, which is a final. We need to say, guys did well to carry themselves, win every match to get to that point and look as dangerous as they did. But also, there's got to be players that we point fingers at. There's got to be people that we say, hey, let's take a look at the performances. Makram, for instance, we know what Themba Bavuma suffered at the hands of South Africans when his performances were under par here as well. Surely, there's senior players within the team whom we've got to say, you guys should have done better.
Yeah, I hear you, and Aiden Markham, well, he'll be the first one to put up his hand and say, I didn't get enough runs in this tournament, which he didn't. That's a fact. And then do you say you played on really difficult wickets in New York, where pitches that were never ever players that never ever encountered before, and it was that really favoured the bowlers. So those 3 wickets. Yeah, those 3 pitches, you not consider that, and you look at the others. But Aiden Markham, you'll be the first one as the captain. You'll be the first one to say, I didn't contribute to the bat as much as I wanted to. I thought he was absolutely excellent as a captain. He was fantastic, particularly in the game, in the semi-final against Afghanistan, where he bowled himself for 4 overs up front. He's never ever done that, and he kept KG back until the 18th over, where KG hasn't bowled after the 5th over throughout his entire career. And that was purely based on conditions that favoured spin. But he bowled 12 overs of spin in that game. His catching was unbelievable. As Kass just mentioned now, that catch against England, that won us the game. The same like Sky Yadav's catch won the game the other day. But Aiden Markham, he'll put up his hand. He didn't score enough runs. When it comes to Reza Hendricks, equally. Reza Hendricks was not, he's waited for his chance for that long. It's been, he was the unlucky one in the previous World Cup where he missed out because of the previous captain. He never got game time. And unfortunately, this World Cup, when he had a chance, he never prospered. And it was a big loss for South Africa because Quinton de Kock then shouldered a lot of the responsibility. All the bowlers I felt were excellent. All the seamers, they were absolutely excellent. The spinners, Shamsi, Keshav, were unbelievable. But if you turn in terms of runs, Aiden Markham as a batter, he will put up his hand and say, I never got enough runs. Reza Hendricks was as clear as he got a couple of good balls, and that's part of cricket, unfortunately. Yes, but again, Boomerang's ball to him in the final was, my exact quote in my article was, a devilish delivery straight out of hell. Basically, that is what I wrote, because that's how good it was. But yeah, those are the 2 I would think in regards to the batting, where this comes from. In regards to South Africa and losing finals, India have lost 2 finals this year already. They've lost 2 ICC finals. They lost the 50 over final in Ahmedabad last year, and they lost the Test Championship in New Zealand against New Zealand at the Oval just 12 months ago. So teams lose finals and then they go on to win one. So yeah, as Kass said, maybe you got to lose one before you win one.
And it's that backlash against Themba Bavuma as captain when he wasn't performing that I thought, let's see what happens now. And you're spot on. There's a lot more to captaincy in a cricket team, unlike in most sport, than what you do with the bat. And he might have been great at setting his field, and he might have been great at reading the game, but with the bat, I think he could have done much better too. Let's move focus now, Kass. This is a conversation I've been meaning to have, to say, and it was sparked by seeing a tweet of somebody that asked the question, should we really have this transformation conversation? When this team was picked, a lot of us looked at it and thought, gee whiz, when have we gone this far back in South African cricket? KG Rabada, the only person of color, black person, as part of this team. Reminiscent, I said, of 99. Yes, Makantini was part of the team for a while until, of course, he was removed from the team, and I think it was Dawson that came in his place. If you look at the composition of this team in respect to who South Africa are and who we've been trying to be, it's a two-pronged conversation. The one says, look at how far we've gotten without implementing those transformational laws. we went all the way to a final. Would we have gotten that far if we had maybe implemented transformation? For me, it's a conversation that says black players have been weighing this team down. Look at what happens when it's just white players on that pitch. But at the same time, you then think and you look at it and you say, hey, they really did do well. They've gotten us further than any other team has done before. What are your thoughts on that conversation, Kass?
Andile, before Kass, I want to come in there before Kass answers. With all due respect, I actually asked that question. It was my question in the press conference when the squad got announced. I asked the question: where are we going in South African cricket if that is the situation? If that is the situation where there's only one black African player, we're going to a World Cup. And I wrote that back in 2009 when there was no black African in the World Cup, when Makai and Ntini did not make the squad to 2009. And that's when I asked the question back then already, like, what are we doing in South African cricket? But we also need to understand that cricket it's not a one format game. You get Test cricket, you get one-day cricket, and you get 2020 cricket. And each format has a different set of skills. And at this point in time, where we are in terms of the growth, and whether we can debate it, why are we still debating it in 2024? That is a question. But if you look at the one-day team, the representation is far greater in terms of black African in the one-day side. In the Test side, equally, there's greater representation. It is the T20 format that has now highlighted that. That is unfortunately what has arisen in this situation, and why we are there, because we've been dependent on one in Makai and Ntini. We were dependent on Temba Bavuma as the one batter in terms of all formats. So when Temba Bavuma is not there, then there's nobody else. So it is not a national question. It's not a question that relates to the Proteas. It's far greater a question that needs to be directed at the system and the entire the structures that are serving the Proteas. And at that level, you have a minimum of 3 black Africans in every provincial team. Every A division and B division has to have a minimum of 3 black Africans. That is without debate. So that's a minimum of 24 black African cricketers walking out onto the field in the A division every single week. Every single weekend, there are 24 black Africans, a minimum of 24 black Africans walking onto the cricket field. And from there, the question is, are those guys delivering? That 24 minimum, are they delivering the numbers? Are they performing to a level that can then escalate to the Proteas? That, to me, so the system is there. It is there. It is being aided that black African cricketers can play at the highest level. The coaches are doing what they absolutely can. Quality of opportunity for black African cricketers, but all the players themselves taking accountability, taking responsibility to put in the performances that get the attention of the national collective.
Kass?
So I'm going to be a mom. You know, I'm a mom to 3, so I lecture people. So if you feel like you're being lectured, just take it with a pinch of salt, because it's just, we've got to call a spade a spade. Cricket South Africa invests millions into ensuring that there are more black African cricketers produced at every level, that when it comes to World Cups and we have a bigger gaze on the team, that we feel comfortable that there is transformation taking place. So the investment is there. The structures are there. More and more facilities are being made available. Players are being given opportunities. Man, we should be producing results. That is where it's at. It's not like nothing is being done. So I don't want anyone who's listening to this conversation to think nothing is being done. But then 30 years of freedom is what we're celebrating this year. And I just wonder if the biggest white elephant in the room is continuously being ignored. And that is a sincerity to want to see change happen in this country. And that is to be able to remove the prejudices of what merit looks like, and that to start seeing players for who they are and what they are, and give them the kind of support that will enable them and encourage them to put in the performances that will get the attention of the national selectors. I don't feel that enough people who are given the responsibilities as school coaches, as cricket administrators, as anyone associated with cricket development, I don't know if we have enough sincerity, if we really want to be united as a cricket nation. I am asking that question, are we really? Because if we were, we would have had more than one Black African player in the team. I agree with Zaahier that's a different set of skills for all the different formats. But I'm just saying, if there was enough sincerity for what is in place, surely more players should be given the opportunity to rise up. One of the biggest disappointments for me is to not see someone like Andile rise and elevate and become the star that even Lance Klusener said he would become. I don't know what the reason is, but I'm starting to say that there are players out there, and I wonder if we're giving them the right support. Are you changing your gaze, or do you just see Black players as quotas? I'm a firm believer that quotas wouldn't have been required if people were sincere enough to make the changes at grassroots level, so we don't have these conversations when players go to the World Cup. It's unfair on the team to have the semi-final hoodoo to take care of and then worry about whether they're transformed enough. And shout out to Otniel Bartman and Keshav Maharaj and Debre Shamsi and Kagiso Rabada and all the players of color in this team, because the system still is yet to embrace it. And I hope I haven't offended anyone, but that is my view. I feel the day we start seeing people for who they are and we start really believing in talent, merit is just something that, we will see in all colors. I'm always disappointed when we do not see enough Black African players in the team, because for the fact that we have the majority of people being Black African, and we can't show that, not just in cricket. Cricket is just because we're so passionate about it. Rugby is. People will say, why aren't we talking about it in football? We'll have that conversation as well. But in 30 years of freedom that we're still having this conversation makes me a bit sad.
Yeah, and I was listening to Zaahier. I think you make a couple of good points there, Zaahier, but I feel if we are able to dish out as many white players as we are able to dish out for the different formats, T20, the 50s overs, the 5-day, all of that, we should be in equal strength able to dish out players of color as well. To have 3 minimums per team, all that does, it says, hey, let's get people that are good enough out there to play. It doesn't say, let's further invest and make sure that we have more than just the 3 minimums. Let's make sure that we have the best available talent to get out there. But I feel, as much as Kass, yes, they're investing, is Cricket South Africa and grassroots cricket, but it feels to me like it's just the marking of boxes to say, hey guys, let's go put up a clinic over there, let's go drop off a couple of bats and a couple of balls over there and outline how the game is played. I am not sure that if I go to the cricket academies, if I go to the cricket strong schools in South Africa, the same effort that's been put into those schools is been put on into the schools in the township. It's been put on onto those very same clinics and those same CSI. And I say that in inverted commas because that's what it feels like to me. It feels like it's a CSI duty for them, Cricket South Africa, and even Department of Sports, actually, to go to the townships, to go to predominantly black areas, predominantly colored areas, and bring cricket to them. It doesn't feel like it's a real, 30 years later, it doesn't feel like it's a real unearthing of talent to bring out the best of that talent so that they're able to play at the same level as what we're seeing the white players in the different formats.
Andile, absolutely. I agree with you 150%. So I come from a background where SACOS, where non-racial sport was the beacon of my household. It's in my DNA, where that's exactly what was fought for. Was for equal opportunities. It was for and I can relate stories to you where right at the beginning when unity was formed, that SACOS did not want unity. It was unity. They didn't want us to return to international cricket because they felt that the playing fields weren't level. The chiefs of SACOS at the time, the custodians of non-racial sport, were all about the fact that our school children and our needed to be afforded the same opportunities, the same facilities. That's what SACOS wanted from the very, very beginning. But we rushed international sports. We wanted, and this is going right to the very beginning. We wanted to play international cricket again. And when I say we, it's not we. It was the South African Cricket Union who joined with the South African Cricket Board who wanted to play international cricket. And the argument was that the quicker we play international cricket, that is what will bring the money in for the development programs. That will bring in the funds to grow the game, and from there on we can go. And unfortunately, yes, the money came in and the money was spent, but that was not, as Kass says, it wasn't the desire, it wasn't the inherent desire to transform. And that's why our quotas was eventually brought in 2001. And so if we go to so everything is how you start. And when we started the process, it was about South African Cricket Union wanted international cricket because that was what they were missing. That was the thing that they missed, that an entire generation from 1970 had missed out on. The golden generation of South African cricket had missed out on. South African Cricket Board had never played international cricket. That wasn't the reason. They knew that their time has passed. It was for the next generation. It was for the likes of us and yourself and the guys like Gerald Sky Majola who had made the sacrifices to not play international cricket, to not go to that was where the entire situation started. And it is about our schools, it is about, and so if you do a survey today, then you look at how many schools play cricket in the townships and when I say townships, I'm talking about black, colored, all that, how little cricket gets played today. That is the fundamental problem. The only way that any player of color now gets to the national team, he has to show a little bit of talent. He gets selected for a provincial team, and he goes via a former Model C school or a private school. That's the system. That is what has transpired. But the schools within the communities are not playing cricket anymore, and that's how the masses have stopped playing cricket, and that's where you're missing out on the numbers of attracting to get to the highest level.
Then the conversation must be blatant, Kass. Let's all agree that the quotas system doesn't work. It has not effected transformation. You take a look at our rugby, our national rugby team. We don't even speak or ask for transformation there because we're seeing some of the best players locally and abroad being black players. You look at how our team wins and you look at the records they've been setting. It is black players. In cricket, it hasn't been so because Cricket South Africa, in my view, has not put in the work in order to do that. Do we then say, let's, as far as cricket is concerned, scrap this quota system and take a look at something else? Because I'm never going to be okay with it. I'm never going to get to a point where I say, well, you know what, guys, they don't want us to play their game. They don't want us involved there, so let's leave it alone and move on. Something needs to be done that will effect change, that will effect the way cricket is seen in this country, that will allow people of all creeds to play cricket and represent their country at the best levels. What is it that needs to be done then? The quota system has not worked. The minimums of 3 has not worked.
Then what is the alternative? And I think it's important to know what is the alternative to ensure that we get positive change. So I disagree on the quotas thing because if you think about it, a lot of the reasons why women have been advancing was there's been a lot that's been put in place, that there's got to be more inclusivity, more diversity and all of that. I remember when I got into the commentary box early on, I was called a BEE appointee. And at first it affected me because I thought, well, I'm there because I'm skilled and I should be there. But when I thought about it, had there not been, the laws of the country that supported women advancing, I probably wouldn't have been seen and gotten the opportunity. And 21 years later, I'm still there. And it's because there were those kind of laws in the country. So I do think that if there wasn't quotas, then every time there wouldn't have been any urgency to try to include more people. But I'll still go back to sincerity because, and I'm not here trying to do PR for Cricket South Africa or, scared to say anything against the Federation because they know that I am not scared of that. And we're happy to have the hard conversations. But there's so much that the Federation does. And is it more kind of we need champions on the ground to effect all these changes, to help Cricket South Africa? Maybe that is what is the missing link for Cricket South Africa, is they actually need to be able to look at all the affiliates and that they have around the country. They've got like 16, or if they're looking at 9, or if they're looking at the 6 franchises, whatever the number it is, find these champions on the ground, because it's tough at head office. There's so much you've got to do, all these global deals, you're busy, you're running an office, you've got to ticket games. There is just so much happening that I feel there isn't enough happening on the ground because there aren't enough champions that have been identified. And maybe that is something Cricket South Africa can look for. But I wouldn't get all dramatic about scrapping the quota system. I want to bring us back to some good news. And the good news is South Africa won a silver medal at the World Cup. And a lot of people are not saying that or even acknowledging it. They're like, oh, we made the finals and lost to India. We lost to the team that no other team got close to pushing in this World Cup. Australia were blown away. There were teams that just could not get close to India. And something good must be happening. The coach must be doing something right. Let's build on the positive stuff. I always believe that you can do better things when you look at what are the positives that have come out of it. And I do believe that we can build from this. But at the same time, we can also have hard conversations. And I hope the hard conversations happen at head office, on the ground, people listening to this conversation in charge of cricket thinking, am I doing enough to make sure that the next World Cup team that goes out reflects a little bit more of who we are as a nation?
I don't think this is the last of this conversation. An hour is just not enough. I think I'd love to carry it on, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's something that we need to talk about in more detail, perhaps. So Zaahier and Kass, I hope you guys give us your time again soon so we can continue with this conversation, because I do feel if we just speak about it during a World Cup tenure and then let it be again, the next World Cup, we'll be speaking the same conversation. But perhaps if we continue to have these conversations, we can impact some change as well. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate you both.
Thanks, Andile.
Bye-bye.
We're out of here. Thank you so much for that. Hey, remember, it's your moment. Join Engine, the proud fuel sponsor of the Springboks, for the latest on the Engine Knockout Challenge. Get into rugby program and the Comrades Marathon, where passion meets opportunity, because with us, you are number one.
Sports Night Amplified with Andile on Metro FM. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sports.
The It's Your Moment sports segment is proudly brought to you by Engine, the proud fuel sponsor of the Springboks and Comrades Marathon. Engine, with us, you are number one. Better get out of here. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. We'll do it again tomorrow, Podcast Friday. In the words of my good friend Mpo, says no quota systems means there was never a Makayantini, never a Lamborghini, never a Kagiso Rabada, never a Temba Bavuma.